Okay, today we're going to go over the spiraling worksheet, week number 4. Number 1 says, is this a function? So remember, we can do our pencil line test or our vertical line test. If I can draw a vertical line and I'm crossing more than one point at a time, then this is no, this is not a function. Number 2 says, identify the slope and the y-intercept. So I need this to be in slope-intercept form so that I can pick that out. So that means we need to rearrange. I need to get the y by itself. So I will subtract the 8x from both sides. And that will leave me a negative 4y equals a negative 8x minus 20. And then divide everything by negative 4. And that will leave me my y by itself. And a negative 8 divided by negative 4 is a positive 2. And a negative 20 divided by negative 4 is a positive 5. So now we should be able to pick out our slope and our y-intercept. My slope would be 2, and my y-intercept will be the 5. Number 3 says, which of the following is the correct description of the function negative 8x plus y equals 3? So in order to look at this, I'm going to put it into slope-intercept form. So again, I need the y to be by itself. So if I add 8x to both sides, that is going to give me y equals 8x plus 3. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put this into the calculator. Sorry, let me get that up. Here we go. And I am going to go to adding a list in a spreadsheet. If I can get that over here. Here we go. Let me make that bigger. Okay. And so I will arrow up, and here I will put my x, and then I'll put y in the B column. And that is not what I want to do. Okay, let's start all over again. Let's go to a new document. That's what I want to do. I don't want to save anything ever. And I want to do a graph. And let's type this in. We have 8x plus 3. I'm going to hit enter, and I see my graph, but I'm not really concerned about my graph. I want the table, so I'm going to hit Control T to get me my table. And now I'm going to compare my table to the points that they've given me on the paper. So on A, since you have your paper in front of you, on A, it says the graph of the function contains the points negative 3, negative 1. So let me arrow up. There we have negative 3, negative 21. That works. Then it says a positive 3, positive 27. We also have a positive 3 and a positive 27. And then it says 5 and 45. We have the 5, but we don't have a 45. That's a 43. So A is not it. If I go to B, it says the graph of the function contains the points 1, 11. We can see right here we have 1 and 11, so that worked. And it says with a slope of negative 8. So if you look at our slope up here, this definitely is not a negative 8. It is a positive 8. So B, again, will not work. So let's keep going. C says the graph of the function contains the points negative 6, negative 45. So, sorry, let me see. Negative 6, negative 45. So let me start. Oh, there we go. Negative 6, negative 45. Okay, we've got that. Negative 2, negative 13. We have that one. And then 0, 3. And we have that one. So it looks like C is going to be the correct answer. So let's get this back up. And C is going to be it. Number 4 says find the x and the y-intercepts for the following graph. So remember, when we do the x-intercept, my x-intercept, my y value is always 0. And for the y-intercept, my x value is always 0. So if I replace this first one with a 0, this whole thing turns into a 0. And it just leaves me a negative 8 equals a negative 24. Divide both sides by negative 8, I'm getting a positive 4. So my x-intercept is a positive 4. And if we do that again, but with the y, that means this all turns into a 0, and it just leaves me 6y equals negative 24. Divide both sides by 6, and I'm going to get a negative 4. Sorry guys, this should have been a positive 3 back here. Let's change that to a 3. 8 goes into 24 3 times, not 4 times. Sorry about that. Number 5 says identify the zero of the graphed equation. Remember we had roots, zero, solutions. These all mean x-intercept. So I am just simply finding the x-intercept. So I go over here to my graph. This is crossing the x-axis at this point. So that means it is going to be at -4, 0. Number 6 says write an equation that is parallel to the line 10x plus 5y equals -40 and passes through the point -4, positive 13. So if I'm wanting an equation to be parallel, we know that that means my slopes are going to be the same. All right, so I'm going to write same slope here. So if I look at this equation right here, I need to pick out my slope. Well, this is not in slope-intercept form, so again, I need to do some rearranging. So I'm going to do that over here at the side. That means I'm going to get my x to the other side of my equal sign. That leaves me 5y equals -10x minus 40. Divide everything by 5. And that will leave me y equals a -2x minus 8. So my slope is going to be a -2. So if I'm going to write an equation that has the same slope and passes through this point, I will be using the point slope form. So let me write that right here. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And so we can just plug everything in. This is my x and this is my y. So that means I will have y minus 13 equals my slope. We're going to use the same slope, so that's going to be -2 times x minus a -4. So that means I'm actually going to be adding 4. And all we have to do is simplify this a little bit, meaning get rid of my parentheses and get the y by itself. So we have y minus 13 equals -2x minus 8. Add my 13 to both sides. That gets rid of that. And now we have y equals -2x. And then a -8 plus 13 is going to give me a positive 5. So here's my final answer for number 6. Okay, number 7 is asking us to write an equation that is perpendicular to the line ax minus 4y equals 4 and passes through the point 8, -7. So perpendicular means that my slopes are going to be opposite reciprocals. So we have to remember that. So again, I need to look at this equation. I need to pick out my slope, but it's not in slope-intercept form, so we need to take care of that by isolating my y. So I move my 8x over, and then I will divide everything by -4. So now I have y equals a positive 2x minus 1, and so my slope is going to be 2. But if I want it to be an opposite reciprocal, that means I need it to be a -1/2. So this is my slope I'm going to be using, and this is my point that it needs to pass through. So again, we are going to be putting it into point slope form. So I'll write that up here in pink so we can see it. So that means we're going to have y minus a -7 means I'll have plus 7 equals my new slope is -1/2 times my x minus this x value, which is 8. And again, we need to clean it up a little bit, so get rid of my parentheses. So I have y plus 7 equals -1/2 x. Negative times a negative is a positive, and half of 8 is 4. Subtract 7 on both sides. Bring it down here. We have y equals -1/2 x minus 3. And there's my answer for number 7. Okay, number 8 says a roadside vegetable stand sells pumpkins for $5 each and squashes, I think that should just be squash, and squash for $3 each. One day they sold 6 more squash than pumpkins, and their sales totaled $98. Write and solve a system of equations to find how many pumpkins and squash they sold. Okay, so let's identify some variables. I'm going to let P represent the number of pumpkins that they sold. And of course, S is going to be the number of squash. There we go. All right, so we know that the pumpkins sell for $5 and the squash are $3, and they sold a total of $98 one day. So let's write that. So 5 times the number of pumpkins plus $3 times the number of squash is going to equal the $98. But let's look at the other equation we have to write. It says one day they sold 6 more squash than pumpkins. So in this statement right here, we came to squash first. So it will be S equals, and then 6 more means I'm going to add 6 to the other, whatever we're talking about. In this case, it's pumpkins. So there are my 2 equations. So now I should be able to put that into my calculator. So let me pull my calculator back up. Let's go to Scratchpad. Okay, and on Scratchpad, I don't want nsolve for numerical solve. I want linsolve because we're solving a system of equations. So I'm going to do, menu, 3, and then 2. And I want to change my variables. I want P and S in there, so I'll put P comma S. And then we can hit enter. I know it's a little hard to see, but I want to type in those equations. So let me see if I can do that. 5P plus 3S equals 98. And then arrow down, and I'll have S equals 6 plus P. And then I'll hit enter. So we have 10 and 16. And notice that the 10 is for the P, that's what is represented first, and then the 16 is the S. So we have 10 pumpkin and 16 squash. Okay, number 9 says Anaya makes 14 baskets during her game. Some of these baskets were worth 2 points and others were worth 3 points. In total, she scored 30 points. Write and solve a system of equations to find how many 2-point baskets she made. Okay, so because they're both baskets, I don't want to use B, and if I use a T for 2-point and a T for 3-point, that doesn't help. So I'm going to say T is going to be the number of 2-point baskets. And then I'm going to use an H for 3, the number of 3-point baskets. Okay, so it says she scored a total of 14 baskets. So that means if we have T is the number of 2-point baskets and H is the number of 3-point baskets, and she has a total of 14 baskets, then we need to talk about the value of the baskets. So a T is worth 2 points, and the H was worth 3 points, and altogether she scored 30 points. So here would be her 2 equations that we need, the system. And so again, let's go to our calculator, and I'm going to type that in. Again, we're going to go to menu, 3, and 2. And then again, I'm using a T and an H. So I'll put T comma H, no space, and just hit enter. And now we can type it in. It's T plus H equals 14. And our other equation was 2T plus 3H equals 30. And then I can hit enter. And again, based on what we have right here, the T, this is the 2 points, and the H, this is the 3 points. So she had 12 2-point baskets and 2 3-point baskets.